Welcome to the Market Mystics podcast, where we discuss what's happening in the cryptosphere and trading on Earth as it is in heaven. Buckle up and huddle on while we dive in and get weird. Here are your hosts, Joshua and Kim.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to your Thursday afternoon episode with the Market Mystics. How are you today, Kim?
Doing pretty good.
Nice. It's a great day outside today.
It is
Kansas
nice.
weather is so bipolar. I know we talk about this often, so I apologize. But 2 days ago was 85. Yesterday it snowed
All morning.
and rained. And then today it's not 85, but it's like 60. It's pretty nice outside.
And sunny and nice.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, anyways, Kansas is almost as volatile as the crypto markets are.
Speaking of crypto markets, our sweet little Bitcoin, I don't want to say little, our sweet big boy Bitcoin.
I don't know if that's any better.
I know. Oh, in the markets, Bitcoin is down 3.6% in 24 hours, down almost 8% over 7 days. Ethereum is looking very similar, down 3.5 in 24 hours, down 5.6 in 7 days. We were trying to find a coin, as we always do. Josh has inspired me. I've jumped on this train of trying to find some green when most things are red in the top 100. So I was looking earlier today, probably 3 or 4 hours ago, and I found XCN, which is chain, and it's the number 71 coin by market cap. And when I looked, it was up like 4% in 24 hours and up, I think, 17% in 7 days. But then when we hopped on this Zoom call and we look again, it's now down 4.1% in 24 hours, but still up 16% in the last 7 days. So it has had some growth in the last week. Here's my fun little addition. I think we'll start doing with all of these random coins that we like to point out. Most of them, we don't know what they're about. So I thought maybe we could give you just a quick one-liner about these random coins that we talk about. So Chain is a cloud blockchain infrastructure that enables organizations to build better financial services from the ground up. So I guess if that, I don't know, strikes your fancy or whatever it does, and you can go look them up and learn some more.
There you go. XCN chain. Might be something to put on your radar.
Maybe so. Speaking of being on the radar, I was going to save this for later, but it's kind of become a normal thing to talk about. The Luna Foundation, we've been talking about its big purchases of Bitcoin and Avalanche. And just 2 days ago, they purchased another 2,500 Bitcoin worth about $100 million. I didn't know this before, but they're working toward amassing $10 billion worth of Bitcoin. Wow. And obviously other coins as well for their stablecoin UST.
That's a significant amount of Bitcoin.
It is a significant amount. I still am very encouraged by this project. Just that stable coins backed by the US dollar is one thing, but if the US dollar falls, then the stable coins are also not going to be worth anything. But I'm encouraged by the UST and how they're doing things with backing with Bitcoin, Avalanche, and the dollar.
Yeah, it's interesting. A few episodes ago, we talked about central banks and Russia and Ukraine, and how by blocking Russia's access to their foreign assets, it was, severely limiting their economy. because a lot of countries, a lot of central banks will buy foreign assets, foreign currency, so that if their currency goes down, their hope is that currency over the globe won't go down at the same time. So if the dollar's down, then the ruble's up, or whatever.
Mm.
And that's a little bit like what we're seeing with these stable coins. And with UST taking this approach of using some fiat but also some crypto, they're essentially doing that same thing. They're diversifying their reserves so that if one area is down, then hopefully the other area is sustaining. And that's, I don't want to say that's revolutionary in the crypto world, but it's unique for some of uh, the major stable coins.
Absolutely. Yet another reason why we say this is one to watch. This is not financial advice. It is just, it's an interesting concept. And they're really, just like most of crypto is innovating, this is even innovating further within the cryptosphere.
Yeah, for sure.
Luna's like the Elon of Luna to crypto is kind of what Elon is to industry.
Yes, a disruptor.
Yes, disruptor and innovator,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
right?
Sometimes disruptive technology is can be very fun to watch.
Absolutely. Like
Yeah,
Elon.
like
Speaking of
Elon.
which, last week we talked about him buying, gosh, what was the
Like
9.2% stake
yeah.
in Twitter?
Mhm.
And then we were going to mention on Monday, and then we didn't get there, that he declined the position on the board with Twitter.
Mhm.
So it came out he bought this, and then it was, oh, he's going to join the board, and then it was, no, he's not.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I didn't know this until doing some research last night, which now makes sense after today's news, which we'll get to. But had he accepted the position on the board, I've I've learned that there is a limit to the amount of shares you can own. And so it would have limited his ability to have the control that I think he desires over Twitter, to implement the changes that he would desire over Twitter. And so him declining that, at first when I saw that I was like, "Oh, maybe this is more of just a financial investment strategy and he's just making some money, and maybe it's not as big of a deal as I thought." But then I wake up this morning to a tweet from Elon that says, like, I did something or I made an offer. I can't remember exactly what the word was, but um and it was an SEC filing for him to purchase 100% of Twitter. Like, that's a big, that's huge. Just, I mean, just what he's done this week. Like, here, let's buy a majority share. And I don't know if this was his plan all along or what exactly his plan was, but I'm curious if he bought the majority share, realized he wasn't going to have the influence that he wanted to have, or that with his influence, the changes that he thinks are necessary wouldn't be possible. And so he's just like, well, I guess if I can't do it with the majority share, I'll just buy the whole thing.
Right?
So it'll be interesting to see, does this get accepted by the board? Is it, or by the shareholders? Like, I mean, it could be very disruptive to social media as we know it, or at least the Twitter arena.
Absolutely. I I enjoy watching this from him. It's no secret that I like I like Elon, and I like the influence that he has as kind of this disruptor and this innovator, just like we were talking about. That is the best part about Elon, is he's kind of, from what it seems like, I could not be seeing behind the scenes, but he doesn't seem like he's in anybody's pocket. He's innovating for the sake of innovation.
Mhm.
and he doesn't really care if he disrupts systems on the way. And if you hear us talk about systems of the world at all, I mean, we're kind of for the disruption of some of that stuff. You know what I mean? Like the financial system. This is why we're so passionate about crypto. Is I personally believe that the financial system is broken as we know it, and crypto offers an alternative that could really lead to some more healthy inner workings of financial things for the individual. Anyway, Elon, so in his disrupting of this, and know that this was released, this wasn't like leaked by Elon, this was released from the SEC. They reported this filing. And in that filing, Elon stated that my offer is my best and final offer. And if it's not accepted, I would need to reconsider my position as a shareholder. He said, Twitter has an extraordinary potential. I will unlock it. Pretty bold statement. He offered $43 billion for the 100% stake in Twitter, which was at a purchase price above what the stock price was when he purchased the 9.2% stake.
54% above that.
So he's serious about this. This is why they're probably really going to have to consider this. You know, this isn't an offer that you just go, oh, yeah, we're not doing that.
Right.
Yeah. Right. But he also is very outspoken about wanting to change how things are operating with Twitter. He put out this poll asking all of his followers if they think that Twitter represents free speech well. And 70% said no. And he has said that he has a belief that Twitter could have the potential to be the platform for free speech around the globe, a principle which he believes is a societal imperative for functioning democracy. So he's very outspoken about what he's actually wanting to do with it. And I kind of like it.
Yeah. It's going to be something to watch. You know, we had a little bit of a discussion before the show about, you know, he's tossed around the idea before of creating his own social media. And so it's interesting to me that now he's considering spending $43 billion to purchase an existing one. And, you know, Kim pointed out, and I'm sure is correct, it has to do with the platform that Twitter has already built. You know, there's value in something that's existed and is recognized as probably being the top, within the top 5, maybe the second largest social media platform. So there is value in that. But my mind is wondering, would it have been easier to to build something from the ground up that functioned this way versus taking something that already existed and fixing it? And what that correlates for me is we've talked a lot of times about the differences between Ethereum and Cardano or Polygon or some of these, or Avalanche, you know, some of these coins that saw what Ethereum was doing poorly, and then from the ground up formed their platforms to function better. And so I don't know, it'll be interesting to see if, first of all, does the offer get accepted? You know, does he take 100%? That's the first hurdle. Is it's not a done deal. It is a, you know, it is a legitimate offer that will have to be considered with a lot of um, uh, sincerity, I think. But it isn't a done deal yet. There's steps that have to go through, and then I'm sure if he does get control, there will be some cleaning of house that takes some time to work through for him, just because, not that anyone there is good or bad, it's just that he's going to want to do things his way, and it's not the way Twitter currently is clearly not the way he wants to do it. So it's not just going to remain as it is.
Yeah. I think this is just so like him. Um, just in even talking about innovation and taking something that's already there and improving upon it. That's what it sounds like he's wanting to do with this. I mean, this is what he did in the car industry. This is what he has done in like the space industry, if that's an industry. I don't know, with SpaceX, right? He's taken this thing that's already here and has been innovating to make it better according to his point of view. That's obviously subjective. But that sounds like what he's wanting to do with Twitter. So the platform works, it has users. It doesn't sound like he wants to change the usability of it so much as the principle behind it.
Yeah.
Right. Which is kind of what he's done with cars. Like the car still has steering wheel and still has the four wheels on the ground and it still runs with an engine. It's just what fuels it. What is the principle behind it? Right. Kind of
For
sounds like
sure.
what he's doing on Twitter too.
Yeah. It's there's always a risk when you are um, disrupting something that currently is there versus building something new versus building something in parallel or slightly improving. But I mean, a lot of the things he's done are pretty revolutionary. I mean, he didn't necessarily have the first electric car, but he made electric cars mainstream. He didn't have the first rockets, but he used the first reusable rockets and made it a I mean, space exploration has always been a bit of a public thing because people are just interested in it, but he brought it to a new light.
Mhm.
And I mean, he's done that to some extent with crypto. I mean, he didn't invent crypto, he didn't invent Dogecoin, but he's become the spokesperson for some of these things.
Mhm. Absolutely.
And because he's successful, people trust him. People take his word for it.
That's true. It's very true.
Mm.
Speaking of Twitter, there's some news about the Twitter founder, Jack Dorsey, who is another one of our favorite influencers,
It's
or
true. I'm a
one
big
of
fan.
mine. I can't speak for you, Josh.
Nah, he's top tier for me.
Yep. So
Mm.
talk about this because this is great.
So his very first tweet a while back, March of 2021, so a little over a year ago, sold as an NFT for $2.9 million at that time. Was worth $2.9 million. Well, it was just put back up for auction by the person who owns it, and analysts were expecting it to fetch over $50 million, which is a pretty good return on investment if you're the
Absolutely.
original buyer. However, currently the highest bid is a little over $6,000. That's not even going to cover the gas fees for
Oh
the
my
first
gosh.
transaction. That's such a it's such a crazy thing. And obviously the auction's not over. It's possible that it will skyrocket. But I have to wonder if some of this stuff with Elon and Twitter isn't impacting this sale because people are like, well, Jack started it and there's value here. But if Elon's going to take it and change it, maybe it makes the first tweet from Jack um,
That's
less
valuable.
valuable. I don't know.
We'll see. I
Or
would hate to
maybe,
see them like pitted against each other
right.
because I
I don't
think
think
together they could blow things
yeah,
up.
I don't think that of themselves they would see themselves like that,
Mhm.
but I hope that people don't make it seem like that.
Right. Same. Yep. Same.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to me whether or not that's Is that just not valuable because of what's going on in the world? Are people just don't care about having an NFT of 160 characters? Like, I don't know. I don't know what it is, but something to watch.
Definitely something to watch. Maybe it's not formatted appropriately to put as their Twitter profile, so it's worthless. Not worthless, but
Worth
worth
less.
significantly less.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know either. So, as we're talking about Twitter changing, potential changes in Twitter, and maybe the way that people used to know Twitter to function crumbling, um, it's we want to kind of bring up that there's some things around the world that are going in similar fashions.
Mhm.
We've talked several times before that we think the current financial system is being propped up, is not necessarily transparent in what's going on, in the true health of it. And so our desire is to build systems that can stand up beside it, and that can function when one is not doing as well as the other.
Mhm.
But here's just a good example. The country of Sri Lanka a few weeks ago sort of went on lockdown. They blocked access to social media, more or less the internet for many of their population. There's been talks of, well, I know shortly after that a bunch of their politicians resigned.
Hmm.
There's have been talks of like revolutions and riots and protests in the streets going on there. And there isn't a lot of mainstream media conversation about this. Um, and I don't know exactly why that is. Maybe it's just a small country and is not, a big deal on people's radars, but it's a big deal for the people there, what's
Right.
going on. Um, then yesterday or within this week, the government there said that they would suspend making their foreign debt payments. So basically the IMF and central banks that they have loaned money from, they have told them, "Hey, we're not going to pay you anymore." And um, they've accredited that to their double digit inflation, daily power outages, and the need for essential food and fuel that they have. But then the other thing they've done, which is interesting to me, they have urged all their citizens who are overseas to send home their money so that they can pay for food and fuel, and
Wow.
without fully having to default on their $51 billion in debt, which is pennies compared to what a lot of countries have. But for the size of country, I'm sure that's a significant amount of money. But it's so things like this are important to pay attention to, because most of the central banks in the world are connected to each other to some degree. They loan money back and forth to each other. And if you have an entire country who suddenly says, we're not making our payments anymore, it's going to have some level of impact on them. Now,
Mhm.
Sri Lanka is a small country, and it might, the IMF and central banks might be able to just swallow up $51 billion and go on their merry way without, much issue. But if more and more countries get to that point where they just like, hey, we can't do this, we can't feed our citizens, we can't power our country, we're not paying you anymore, that could have a big impact on world economy.
Mhm.
And especially with some of the things we've seen with Russia and Ukraine, where in to some degree Russia has been banned from using the banking systems that most of the rest of the world uses. They were a large country, and that's going to have some impact. And I'm just curious if this is an isolated event or if it is a snowball effect that we'll start seeing happen throughout other places in the world.
I think that is a valid question. And I don't know how weird I want to get with all of this. But I think there's been some writing on the wall, that people who have eyes to see have kind of been able to see coming a bit with our financial system being so horribly unstable and all of these big amounts of debts. And once you start seeing these countries who just say, we can't do it anymore, we can't keep standing on this debt and be expected to pay it back and still have livelihood for our constituents, I think you're going to start seeing this, and it probably will start. This is how I would expect it to start, with some of these countries that aren't giant, huge superpowers in the world. But I don't know. I will say this. In my personal walk with the Lord, he has led me many times on different, I guess you would call them missions around the world, but from where I am. So I am focusing on him. I am going to him and saying, whatever you need me to do, Lord, I will do it. And he leads me somewhere and tells me to do something. Well, a few years ago, I had probably a year-long time with him where sometimes daily, sometimes weekly, sometimes every month, it depends on what he was having me do, he would go send me to different places in the world, to these different structures, and have me start striking the ground outside of these structures. And I knew, you know how in the spirit sometimes there's just a knowing, like you don't have to have words that tell you this, you don't have to see something, you don't have to hear it, there's a knowing. I knew in myself that these were world systems, and I didn't know which ones they were, and I didn't know why I was there, except this is what he told me to do, so I did it, and then I would go out of it and fine. See, this is why I didn't know how weird I could get. But what was happening, and he was very clear in the purpose of this, is that it was to start shaking the ground, to start cracking the foundations of these systems, because they needed to fall. And so it was structures and systems of the world. But as I see things like this, it always takes me back to that place where he was saying it's so necessary for some of these systems and structures to fall so that kingdom principles and life-giving principles can be instated,
Right.
I suppose. And we've talked about this a million times, but I'm going to say it. I believe that there's a lot of kingdom in the whole concept of cryptocurrency. I believe the Father's in it. If you don't believe me, please, please, please go to him yourself and ask him yourself, ask him to show you or disprove me or whatever. I don't really care. This needs to be something between you and him. And the sooner that gets established, the sooner you'll be able to start walking forward in what he has for you. So I'll say that. But as we see these things start crumbling, I am a bit encouraged because I know that he has something coming, and it's bigger and better and more user-friendly. And we had this conversation beforehand, and I have to wonder, it's kind of the opposite of what Elon's doing, so it's funny to talk about it. I wonder if, let's just talk about the financial system. If the financial system were to stay as it is now, and we have a second financial system come into play that is kingdom, even if the Father himself appeared to you right in front of your face and said, this is kingdom, I need you to operate only in this, would you actually be able to do it? Or would you tend to veer back to what you know in the old system? And I know that there have been times in the past where he has revealed himself and he has taken away things so that you can step into the new. There have also been times when the old does not get taken away and people just stay in the old, even though there's the new. I think about the Israelites who journeyed for 40 years in the desert or in the wilderness, whatever translation you read from, right? And when Joshua and Caleb led the Israelites across the Jordan River into the promised land, there were those who said, I think I'll stay over here. I don't know that I mean, I know it's the promised land. I know it's from the Lord. I know he said it's the land flowing with milk and honey. I know that there's all of these promises in it, but I'm comfortable here. And so I'm just going to stay in this. And I have to wonder if both systems stay as they are now, will the people who are following, people who are kingdom people in the body of Christ, will they actually go to the new system that the Lord has provided, or will they just stay in what is comfortable? And so does there come a point when he just takes away the other option? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. That's I think that's a great example that we can look to. I mean, when the Israelites left Egypt, but they were not all of them, I think, wanted to leave. It was sort of a get out, leave your way of life. I mean, some of them were probably born there. They didn't, I mean, I would imagine most of them were born there. I think they were there for hundreds of years. So probably by the time that they left, all of them had been born there. That was the culture that they knew. That was the language that they knew. That was the environment, the life. And being pulled out of that into a season of nothingness and sort of having to stay in that season of nothingness until they forgot about everything else. That's I mean,
this is so familiar.
I don't want people to go through that. And if they do, I hope it's a fast season for them.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's necessary. It's not comfortable, it's not enjoyable, but it it took some of that season for them to be able to see the promised land for what it was, because there were things in the promised land that you could have chosen to look at as obstacles and said, well, that must not be the promised land. It's
Right.
not what I thought it would look like.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is good. I think we need to continue this conversation on Monday. So I really like the concept of Mystic Mondays.
Yeah.
I want to talk about slave versus son mentality, because this is really what we're talking about. And this is the principle at the heart of this topic. And I think it's really important that we step out of being subject to systems and start being sons who are able to govern over those systems on behalf of our Father. So let's talk more about this on Monday.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Thanks for joining today, guys.
Yeah. We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you for listening. Join us every Monday and Thursday as we discuss trading on earth as it is in heaven. If you want to connect further, follow us on social media at market.mystics for Instagram and TikTok, and search for Market Mystics on YouTube and Facebook. If you still need more, follow the link on Facebook to book a coaching appointment. Until next time, see ya.